Leather and metal details might seem minor, but the attention you pay here can make or break a rank and file squad. Pops of silver and crisp edge highlights instantly draw the eye and take your units to the next level. In this video, I'll show some fast methods to make these areas stand out, looking at different colours of leather and showcasing some easy techniques for beaten and battle-hardened steel, and with no Agrax Earthshade in sight. Perfect for getting your models tabletop ready in no time. I'm going to start by showing 3 different ways to paint leather jackets and armour. For a soft, quilted leather, I begin with an equal parts mix of Apothecary White and Skeleton Horde contrast paints, which gives me a nice pale shade with a slightly warm undertone. I then spot highlight the individual panels of the leather with white scar, trying to focus the highlights on the top edges of the panels where the light would hit. I also edge highlight with this. For a slightly warmer, richer leather, I use Snakebite Leather contrast. To add a little more depth to this, I then shade it further with Targor Rageshade. I edge highlight this with Ungor Flesh. Depending on the type of jacket you're painting, there might be different shapes, but on this example I edge highlight both sides of every individual panel. Then, I further pick out the most prominent edges, usually things like the armholes or buckles, with Screaming Skull. You can leave it here, but if you want to add even more richness, you can glaze all over the leather with Reikland Fleshshade. And for a classic dark brown leather, I base coat with Rhinox Hide. On Empire Militia like these, I use this for vests, hats, and also gloves on any models that have them. Then, with an equal parts mix of Rhinox Hide and Doombull Brown, I layer over most of the leather, leaving Rhinox Hide in the deepest recesses. This mix of paints gives a slightly warmer, redder hue, which will act as our main base colour for the leather. With pure Doombull Brown, I apply a more selective layer, using this to start defining the raised areas that I'll be concentrating the highlights on. I then add equal parts Balor Brown to the Doombull Brown, and apply slightly more refined highlights covering an even smaller area. On any gloved hands, I use this to define the individual ridges of the fingers. Then, with pure Balor Brown, I spot highlight the most extreme points, such as the fingertips and the sharpest points of the cloth. I'm quite sparing with this as it's a jump up in colour from the last layer, but really makes the leather pop. Our final leather colour is black. For this, I base coat with black Templar contrast. Typically boots, bracers, pouches, and any belts and braces. My first highlight is Eshin Grey, which is a really nice dark grey. I use this to start defining shapes, covering most of the leather on the boots and leaving the darkest recesses black. On any belts I apply thick edge highlights, leaving the centre darker. Make these edge highlights thick enough that you can apply thinner highlights in subsequent steps though. Next, with Mechanicus Standard Grey, I apply thinner highlights, leaving some of the previous Eshin Grey visible. With Dawnstone, I paint thinner edge highlights on the boots. This step will really start to emphasise the sharpest creases in the leather. I also use this to apply fine dots and scratches across the flatter surfaces, which is a really easy way to add the appearance of age and wear to your leather. I also use Dawnstone to apply thinner edge highlights on any belts and straps. And finally, with Grey Seer, I spot highlight the sharpest points on the leather. And particularly emphasise any nicks or scratches on the belts. Now our leather is looking great, it's time to turn to metals, and first a beaten steel. Any weapon blades and helmets get a base coat of Iron Hand steel. I like my Empire Army's metals to have a slightly cool blue hue, and so my next step is to wash all over these areas with Gryph Charger Grey contrast, which has a nice blue tone to it. Once this is dry, I start to build up a true metallic metal effect on the weapon blades, applying a second layer of shade on the lower half of one side of a blade, and then the upper side of the other half. You can apply multiple layers, moving slightly further towards the ends of the blade each time, to build up the true metallic metal effect further. On the helmets, I also apply a second layer around any rivets and into any pits and dents. With Stormhost Silver, I finally edge highlight all of the metal areas, using the side of my brush for a more controlled and crisp highlight. On the blades, I also add some scratches and lines to further emphasise that these are used weapons that have seen battle. On the flatter surfaces like helmets, I apply highlights via dots and stipples, which helps to suggest that this is beaten metal. Finally, for any hilts and handles, I base coat these with Retributor Armour, before washing them with Guilliman Flesh contrast paint, and finally highlighting with Auric Armour Gold. This is a really simple way to create shining bright gold that contrasts nicely with the cool blue steel. And there we are, in no time we've made our leather and metal pop and draw the eye. If you're interested in how I painted the fabrics on these models, check out my previous video here. But once your models are fully clothed, the next thing is to tackle the faces, and I'll be showing some of my favourite tricks for painting lifelike skin in the next video. For now, all that remains is to thank my members. Your support really means so much. Please do consider becoming a member yourself if you enjoyed this video, and like and subscribe to be notified when the next tutorial drops. I'll see you next time, and until then, happy painting.